What if everything your doctor told you was technically correct, but completely missed the point? That's what's happening to millions of people right now. Their tests come back normal, their scans look fine, and every specialist they see sends them home with the same answer. Nothing's wrong. But something is wrong, and they know it. They've known it for years. Here's what's actually going on. There's a condition that doesn't show up the way most conditions show up. It doesn't change your blood work. It doesn't light up on a scan. It doesn't give doctors one clear thing to point at. Instead, it shows up in patterns. And once you understand those patterns, you start seeing why so many people spend years being dismissed before anyone connects the dots. That's what this video is about. 7 patterns, explained simply, so that by the end of this, you finally have language for what's been happening. And if you want a free symptom map you can bring to your next appointment, just type symptom map in the comments. I'll send it to you personally. Let's get into it. Picture this. A woman walks in carrying a folder, thick one, both hands. Inside, almost 10 years of lab work, specialist notes, imaging results, every test her doctors ever ordered. Every single result said the same thing: normal. She puts it down and says something that stopped me cold. I feel like my body is falling apart, but every doctor I've seen tells me nothing is wrong. And here's the thing. Her doctors weren't lying. The tests weren't wrong. The problem was that nobody was looking at the whole picture. They were treating each symptom like it was its own separate problem. The pain went to one specialist. The fatigue went to another. The brain fog got written off as stress. Nobody stepped back and asked, what if all of this is connected? That's the question this video answers. Not to diagnose you, not to replace your doctor, but to help you see the pattern so you can walk into your next appointment and actually get somewhere. Let's be honest about something first. Fibromyalgia isn't rare. It affects tens of millions of people. It's one of the most common chronic pain conditions that exists, and yet most people wait years before anyone figures out what's going on. Why? It comes down to 3 things, and once you hear these, everything else in this video will make more sense. The first one is that the symptoms look completely unrelated. You've got pain in one place, fatigue that won't quit, brain fog, and sensitivity to things that never used to bother you. Looked at separately, each one points somewhere different, so nothing connects. The second is that it shows up gradually. There's no moment where everything suddenly gets bad. It creeps in. Pain that was occasional becomes frequent. Tiredness that was manageable becomes constant. And because it happens slowly, people adapt. They stop mentioning things that have quietly become their new normal. The third is that it gets explained away by doctors, by people around them, and honestly, by themselves. I'm just stressed. I'm getting older. Everyone feels like this. Here's the part most people miss. Those 3 things together are exactly why fibromyalgia goes undetected for so long. Not because the signs aren't there, because nobody's been trained to look for them as a group. That changes right now. Pattern 1. The good day, bad day cycle. Let me describe something and tell me if this sounds familiar. Monday, you feel almost okay. Not perfect, but functional. You make plans, you get things done. You think maybe finally it's getting better. Thursday, the floor falls out from under you. Nothing triggered it. You didn't overdo it. You actually rested. But the pain is back louder than before. The fatigue is the kind where getting off the couch takes real effort. And every plan you made on Monday, canceled. And then comes the part that really gets to people. Someone close to you says, but you were fine on Monday. And you don't even know how to respond to that because you were, and now you're not, and you have no idea why. Here's where it gets confusing for most doctors, too. This kind of unpredictability doesn't fit the patterns they're trained to recognize. Pain that responds to rest, fatigue that follows exertion. Fibromyalgia doesn't follow those rules. What's actually happening is that the nervous system is in a state researchers call central sensitization. Think of it like the volume dial on pain and fatigue getting turned way up. And that dial doesn't stay in one place. It fluctuates. That's the cycle.
That's why Monday feels different from Thursday. It's not mood, it's not effort, it's not attitude. It's a nervous system that's been recalibrated in a way that makes ordinary experience feel disproportionately intense. If this sounds like you, type "good day" in the comments. I'll send you a tracking template that helps you document this pattern in a way that actually means something to a doctor. But here's where things start to split, because pattern 2 is usually what sends people down the longest diagnostic rabbit hole. Pattern 2, pain that moves. This one is responsible for more confusion than almost anything else. The pain moves. It's not a bad knee. It's not a shoulder injury that flares and settles. It's pain that travels. This week, it's the upper back. Next week, it's the hips, then the arms, then down the legs. And by the time you get an appointment to look at the shoulder feels fine. Now it's the neck. Here's why that's such a problem.
Medicine is really good at investigating pain that stays in one place. You can image it. You can isolate it. You have a target. But when pain is widespread and shifting, and when it doesn't come with visible swelling or inflammation, investigations tend to come back empty. The joint looks fine, the scan is clear, and you leave without an answer, quietly wondering if you imagined it. You didn't imagine it. What fibromyalgia pain tends to feel like, and this varies from person to person, is a deep aching, sometimes burning, sometimes a heavy pressure, sometimes sharp and brief. It tends to affect both sides of the body, multiple areas, without a clear structural reason. There's also something worth knowing about called allodynia. It's where even light contact, a gentle touch, certain clothing fabrics, produces pain that feels way out of proportion. Normal sensation becomes painful, not because something is damaged there, because the nervous system is interpreting signals differently than it should. The pattern isn't one type of pain in one location. It's pain that moves, shifts, and refuses to be pinned down. And that's not nothing. That's actually really important information if you're talking to someone who knows what it means. Pattern 3, deep, unrefreshing fatigue. Let me ask you something. Have you ever slept 8 hours and woken up feeling like you didn't sleep at all? Not groggy, not slow to start, actually exhausted, like the sleep didn't do anything. That's what this pattern feels like, and it's one of the most dismissed symptoms in the whole picture. Here's the thing about tiredness in everyday life. Everyone's tired. Long hours, phones, stress. Exhaustion has almost become a personality trait in modern culture. So when someone says, "I'm exhausted all the time," it's easy for that to disappear into the noise. But this is a different category. This isn't sleepiness. This isn't needing an earlier bedtime. This is a deep physical heaviness that is there from the moment you wake up, and sometimes it's worse in the morning than it was the night before. That last part is the clue. Fibromyalgia is strongly connected to disrupted sleep at the level of deep restorative cycles. Even when someone sleeps a full night, those cycles keep getting interrupted, not always in ways they're aware of, but enough that the body never completes the repair work sleep is supposed to do. You go through the motions of sleeping, but you don't actually recover. And so fatigue builds day after day until it becomes the baseline, until a trip to the grocery store is genuinely depleting, until a phone call that requires focus leaves you needing to lie down. And the cruel part? When someone tries to explain this to their doctor, they get told to exercise more, go to bed earlier, reduce stress. They've tried all of that. It doesn't touch it, because the problem isn't the hours, it's what the hours aren't doing. If this sounds familiar, type "tired" in the comments, and I'll send you a fatigue documentation guide that helps you describe this in a way doctors actually respond to. Pattern 4, brain fog moments. You're mid-sentence, talking to someone you've known for years, and the word you need, a completely ordinary word, just isn't there. You know it. You can almost feel the shape of it, but it won't come. So you pause, wave your hand vaguely, say you know what I mean, and move on. And later, alone, you think, that's been happening a lot. This is what people call fibro fog, and it goes deeper than forgetting words. Short-term memory becomes unreliable. You walk into a room and have no idea why. You have a whole conversation and can't recall the details an hour later. You reread the same paragraph 3 times and nothing sticks. Thinking feels slower, like everything is coming through a filter. Now, yes, everyone has moments like this, but here's the difference. In fibro fog, it's not moments, it's the baseline. Multiple times a day, consistent enough that it starts affecting your work, your relationships, your confidence in yourself. And the common response from doctors? Stress, anxiety, hormones, age. Let's be honest, for a lot of people, those answers have stopped being satisfying because the fog doesn't lift when the stress does. It doesn't improve when the hormones are balanced. It just stays. What's actually happening involves sleep disruption, which we know impairs memory and cognition even in healthy people, but also possible changes in how the brain allocates attention and processing in fibromyalgia. The experience is real, the mechanism is real, and for a lot of people, just having someone name it properly, that alone changes something. Type brain fog in the comments, and I'll reply with a checklist of cognitive symptoms and how to describe them to a doctor without being dismissed. Pattern 5, sensitivity to stimuli. Saturday afternoon grocery store.
Fluorescent lights, the squeak of cartwheels, 3 separate conversations overlapping, cold air from the freezer section. For most people, background noise, unremarkable. For someone with fibromyalgia, genuinely a lot to handle. The lights feel sharper than they should. The noise compounds in a way that gets uncomfortable fast. The cold registers more intensely. By the time they've made it halfway through the store, the environment itself is exhausting. And if they try to explain this to someone, they get called sensitive, dramatic, anxious. But here's what's actually going on. And this is the part that changes how you understand everything else in this video. The nervous system in fibromyalgia isn't just amplifying pain, it's amplifying all kinds of sensory input. The threshold for what feels intense is lowered across the board. Sounds, light, temperature, touch, all of it gets processed at a higher intensity than it does for most people. This is central sensitization expressed beyond pain. It's the same underlying mechanism, just showing up in a different channel. So when someone with fibromyalgia says a crowded room is overwhelming, or certain fabrics are uncomfortable, or they need the temperature to be just right, that's not a personality quirk. That's a nervous system doing its best to manage a world that feels turned up too loud. And this is where things get really interesting, because pattern 6 shows exactly how all of this starts connecting to things that look like completely separate problems. Pattern 6, overlapping conditions. Here's something nobody prepares you for. Fibromyalgia almost never shows up alone. And this is where people get really confused, because they're not dealing with one thing that's hard to explain. They're dealing with several things that are hard to explain. And each one is getting treated separately by a different doctor who has no idea what the others are doing. IBS, chronic headaches, restless leg syndrome, jaw pain, bladder sensitivity, anxiety, depression. Sound familiar? Here's the part most people never get told. A lot of these conditions share something in common: altered nervous system processing. They may not actually be separate diseases that happened to pile up in one person. They may be different expressions of the same underlying mechanism showing up in different places, which changes everything about how you think about it. Instead of asking, "Why do I have so many things wrong with me?" which is an exhausting, demoralizing question with no good answer, the question becomes, "Why is my nervous system processing the way it is, and what can we do about that?" That second question, medicine can actually work with, but you can only get there once someone looks at the whole picture instead of each piece in isolation. If you've been bouncing between specialists with no one connecting the dots, type overlap in the comments. I'll send you a guide that helps you document all of this in a way that makes it impossible to treat as separate problems. Pattern 7. Everything looks normal. This is the one that does the most quiet damage. Not to your body, to your sense of reality. You describe everything to your doctor.
They run the tests, blood work, imaging, inflammatory markers, thyroid, autoimmune panels, careful, thorough testing, and everything comes back normal. And your doctor, meaning well, says, good news, everything looks fine. But you don't feel fine. You haven't felt fine in years, and being told the paperwork says otherwise doesn't make the pain quieter or the exhaustion lighter. It just adds confusion on top of everything else. And over time, after hearing this at appointment after appointment, from specialist after specialist, something starts to shift internally. You start wondering, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it really is just stress. Maybe everyone feels like this and I'm just not coping well. Let's be honest about what that does to a person. Years of real symptoms, years of being told nothing's there. It makes people stop trusting their own experience. And that is one of the most harmful parts of this whole picture. Here's what you actually need to know. Fibromyalgia doesn't show up on standard blood work or conventional imaging, not because nothing is happening, but because what is happening is at the level of how the nervous system processes signals. Standard testing is built to detect tissue damage and inflammation. When those aren't the primary issue, the tests come back clean. Clean tests don't mean nothing is wrong. Fibromyalgia is a recognized medical condition. It has established diagnostic criteria. It has a pattern, one that a clinician who knows what to look for can identify.
The problem is that pattern recognition starts with someone looking for it. And that starts with you walking in with the right information and the right questions. If you've spent years being told your tests are normal while not feeling normal, type normal tests in the comments. I'll reply with a list of specific questions and requests that have helped people in exactly this situation finally get somewhere. Now let's just hold all 7 of these together for a second. The unpredictable cycle. Good days that crash without warning. Pain that moves and shifts and never stays in one place. Fatigue that sleep doesn't touch and mornings that feel worse than the nights before them. Brain fog that makes you feel less like yourself than you used to be. Sensitivities to sounds, light, temperature, touch, things that never used to bother you. Multiple conditions being treated separately that might actually be connected. And test results that keep saying normal while your experience keeps saying otherwise. Now, none of these alone tells the whole story. Each one deserves proper evaluation. This isn't a checklist for diagnosing yourself. But if several of these patterns have been present for a long time, if they keep getting explained away without resolution, that's worth paying attention to. Not with alarm, with clarity. Because clarity is what gets you somewhere. So what do you actually do with this? First, write it down before your next appointment. Not in your head, on paper. Be specific. Not just, I'm always tired, but I wake up unrefreshed most mornings no matter how long I sleep. I've had pain that moves between my shoulders, lower back, and legs for approximately this long. I notice I'm more sensitive to noise and light than I used to be. Specificity changes the conversation. It's harder to brush off something that's documented clearly. Second, you can just say to your doctor, I've been noticing a pattern of symptoms that I'd like to make sure we're looking at together, not just separately. Is there someone I should see who looks at the whole picture? That's it. You don't need to come in with a diagnosis. You just need to come in with a pattern. And if you haven't been heard, a second opinion is completely reasonable. Not aggressive, not dramatic, just reasonable. You're allowed to keep looking until someone looks properly. If you want everything I just described in one printable document, a symptom tracker, the phrases to use, the questions to ask, just type diagnosis plan in the comments. I'll send it to you directly. That woman with the folder, 10 years of normal results, 10 years of being told nothing was wrong. What she needed wasn't a different test. She needed someone to look at everything together, to see what each individual result had been hiding. And when someone finally did, she said something I haven't forgotten. I knew something was wrong. I just needed someone to believe me.
If you've been told everything is normal, but you don't feel normal, that matters. You don't need to have all the answers walking out of this video. You just need enough clarity to ask better questions. And if you want this whole breakdown in one simple document, just type scorecard in the comments. I'll send it to you. Because what comes next, when fibromyalgia starts overlapping with other conditions that look completely different, is where things get really complicated. And that's exactly what the next video covers.